As we were driving around town today, my little boy Zachary back there was eating crackers, and he asked me, "Dad, how come Hendersonville doesn't have a town square?" There's really two reasons for that. One is that it never really had a center of government. The other is it never really had a center of commerce for the area. The closest thing we ever had to a center of government is right behind me, and that is there are two houses. Say hi, Zachary. There's two houses behind there that at one point were Hendersonville City Hall and the first Hendersonville Police Building, but that wasn't until 1969. Really the closest thing we ever had to a center of commerce was sort of this area right here. For a century and a half, old timers would say that Hendersonville was just a wide spot in the road. It wasn't very wide at that. It was just a couple stops between Gallatin and Nashville on Gallatin Road, also known as Nashville Pike. And if anything, there was sort of a little branch off right here on Shivel Drive. This is the city's first subdivision that branched off from that center of commerce. And most of the houses were built in the 1950s, 1960s, and even in the 1940s. But this area here was the only real center of commerce, and we're talking the 1950s and 1960s, and this was the library that was built in late 1960s, early 1970s, and coming up here was City Square Shopping Center. That was, I want to say, built early 1970s, and right there was the offices, used to be the offices of the Hendersonville Utility District, and this white building over here was the back of Hunt's Grocery Store. Over to a little bit to the right was Freed's Ace Hardware, back over there, and then H.G. Hill beyond there. Behind me would have been the old Church of Christ and the old First Baptist Church down there a little ways, and then the Newman and Friel's Garden Center a little bit further away. Really, if there's any sort of transportation hub for this center of commerce, it would have been down here off to the left, off of Old Shackle Island Road, where there was a train stop for the Durham Lumber Company. Very much Hendersonville at that time was linear, and still to this point it really still is. It was Gallatin Road between Nashville and Gallatin, and then branched off a little bit, head north Old Shackle Island Road, heading south Walton Ferry Road, Sanders Ferry Road, and then, like I said, Shivel Drive for some of those residences as well. But this was the center of activity, center of commerce for a couple decades. The city grew in a way that made it hard for there really to be a town square, really to be a continuing center of activity. The city grew north and south. It grew down the peninsulas, and it was really residential that grew down that direction, and it continued really north and south as property became available for the lakes, and it continued so that that people could build down in what used to be farmland, and on land that had easy access to Gallatin Road, so people could go work in Nashville. The only real attempt to create really a town square or a city center for commerce that was anything long-lasting was really the Merchants down Stadium Drive. They got together in the 1970s into the 1980s and really tried to encourage people to come shop at one and walk to the others. And that was something that was tried for a decade or so with limited success, but certainly was worth the effort. In the 1970s, after the city government organized, there was some effort to really create a town center and to encourage businesses in this part of the city to locate here. And then again, 2003, 2004, by the city of Hendersonville do the same to create a town center, a town core. And neither one of those attempts really had much success, as the center of activities really, instead of being concentrated in one area, the center of activities really spread out east and west toward Indian Lake Road in the 1970s, and then further east from there, headed west to almost connect Rivergate with Hendersonville along Rockland Road, and then where the Vietnam Veterans Boulevard came into. So as years went on, really there was less of a concentration for an area, so less likelihood of a really town center. And it wasn't unheard of. For really 40 years, town squares have been having a hard time in the United States. And Gallatin is a good example, as that town square sort of struggles here and there. But what's happened is that the availability of automobiles and the availability of cheaper land, and the extension of infrastructure, so that town squares really have a harder time and are less likely to really attract businesses as they used to. And really what that says is that if you don't have a town square, you probably never will.